So now that I've seen your lab, your room, I have a little bit of a better understanding, or at least I can visualize what happens when players are in the building and what you're doing with them and seeing the other technologies that you're using. So it felt like, correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the focus in terms of the work you're doing with players today is really in the area of what we refer to as priming, but I think you generally call it activation or pre-activation. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll have anywhere from 6 to 12 players. That room will only fit like 6 players at a time if they're in
Mhm.
virtual. And so they'll cycle through before training,
Mhm.
typically anywhere from 8 to 15 minutes, and they activate. And what we're getting after when we activate is just to prepare them for learning,
Mm.
uh, almost prepare them, activate them so that when the training sessions begins, their mind is in the right place to either learn or just to promote their skill building, whatever it might be, whatever the
Mm.
focus of our coach's training session is at that point.
So a little bit of neuroplasticity priming or neuroplasticity prepping, and then a little bit of just activation in terms of turning on the right parts of the brain, hopefully getting the brain to start producing norepinephrine and acetylcholine and dopamine and just have them ready to get the most out of their next session, their training experience.
Exactly. I mean, we can't always rely on the coaching staff to implement in the warm up a training session that will activate
Mm.
the cognitive pathways.
Hmm.
But we just want to make sure that whether it's speed and reaction or tracking or concentration focus, we want to make sure we activate those pathways prior to the session, and almost more importantly for us, prior to matches. We have 6 to 10 players who will cycle through the room um, prior to games to be prepared, whether or not they're in the starting lineup or not.
Mm.
We know the starting lineup and we know the bench, but we have a lot of players. It's almost like their routine now, and it's as important. The routine is as important as what they're doing inside the headset, inside
Hmm.
virtual reality. So they stick to that. We've had some really entertaining moments on the road where
They take the headsets on the road.
yeah,
That's great.
they are literally in the shower stalls with just enough room. We love the team shower stalls because that gives you enough room to move around. But yeah, the players really have bought into it and then have done a good job of following through with what we've set up with that for them for the day, for their routine.
What are some of the highlights or what are some of the consistent messages that you're hearing from players in terms of how they describe the benefit of NeuroTrainer? Are they using the same language we're using?
They would use the word activation,
Mm.
which in hindsight maybe I should have used the word priming, just from the standpoint of that makes it easier when they're in NeuroTrainer to just go right to the priming
Mm.
sessions. I have to give that little brief explanation, but it's a 1 to 2 week process to get them to understand that activation is priming.
Sure.
The coaching staff uses the word activation, so
Mm.
this is why we've done it
Mhm.
this way. Our training sessions are also geared that the first 20 to 30 minutes while you're warming up, that's considered activation
Mhm.
portion of our
Mhm.
sessions. So that language is fairly consistent. The most prominent kind of, I guess, statements are, I just feel more prepared,
Mm.
is kind of I would say the overarching subjective that we get, this
Mhm.
idea of preparation. And then secondary to that, after our on the field training session, if the players are going to go into a building session in NeuroTrainer, slightly longer period of time, 15 to 25 minutes perhaps, the second subjective sense is a little bit of exhaustion, a little bit
Mm.
of I have really put in my shift today.
Mm.
The cognitive fatigue or load that the
Mhm.
players feel coming in at halftime or at the end of the game. Like I
Mm.
have really done my concentration. I have really put in my my cognitive shift, if you will. They don't use that language, but they definitely use the, yeah, I feel like I've just gone through a half of football.
Almost as a proxy. So it's a cognitive proxy for playing half a game. Or yeah, that's great.
We have to get them, it takes incredible discipline, right, to try and get into the headset 3 times a week for
Right.
15 25 minutes, especially after you've had a demanding training session. The cadence of the training week is important because day before the game, we just like to keep things nice, quick, and sharp.
Mm.
Don't like them. I won't. I prefer they not be in doing anything for longer than 15 minutes
Hmm.
day before the game. Um, yeah, so there's a bit of science or real strong consideration to how we're deploying the device, so that the players feel they're getting the most out of it and it's helpful to their overall performance and our overall ability to get the result that we want in the game.
Right. Well, it's pretty clear to me you're really at the tip of the spear in terms of how you're exploring and implementing these cognitive tools in professional soccer in the United States. I don't think there are many other teams that are doing it yet. Is that right?
I think we are one of the few organizations that is really looking at cognition
Mm.
and trying to really, as we would a bicep or a quad or a hamstring or overall endurance, to really look at cognition and to try and it's not a great word to use maybe, but exploit it to
Mm.
its to the best of our athletes' ability, so
Hmm.
that either prepared or that they are gaining 1 to 3 to 5% in their overall capacity to perform cognitive features or functions,
Right.
whether that's executive cognitive function, as I mentioned, tracking, scanning, visual kind of stuff, focus, attention, decision making, processing multiple pieces of information. We want to see, and I feel strongly that we can improve that capacity.
Hmm.
That's enough that makes it worthwhile to go after it. And whether or not, I think there might be other franchises or other organizations that want players to be thinking quicker and work on focus and concentration. But I think it's always within the context of an exercise that's being delivered on the field or on the court. We're separating it out to really say, let's train this specific feature.
Hmm.
Um,
Component.
overall,
You're separating it as a component of performance.
right?
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yet at the same time, you're doing both, which is what I think is really working. You're separating it as a component of fitness, thereby or a component of performance, thereby giving it status. But at the same time, you found a way to incorporate it into the overall training plan so it doesn't feel like an orphan. And it feels to me from the outside looking in like that's why you're being as successful as you are. You found a way to synergize those two pieces.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. We were always learning. We're always figuring out a different way to, not a different way, but to enhance it to make sure that even on the field, so that the players can see what happens in our lab or in the gym, wherever we choose to deploy these types of things.
Mhm.
We can also see it on the field, and I think
Mhm.
that's super important. Yeah, you guys have been great partners with us. And I mention that just because you guys have always been great, responsive to all those immediate needs that might
Mhm.
be technologically driven or whatever, right? Like even user failure. But it's nice to have a partner who respects and understands that this is I'm in an environment where we have to win and we
Yeah,
have to provide service like that. We get all antsy if we miss a day. And if we miss a day because something, was down, that generally doesn't do well for us. So
sure.
it's nice having you. It was nice having you down to be able to see everything, and you've supported not only myself but all the interns that I have going through to make all this happen. And I think it's been a great partnership. I'm looking forward to the future with you
Me
guys.
too.